And ladies and gentlemen, welcome everyone to the 8th episode of the Open Fort podcast. I'm Naturesbf. Joining me are my co-hosts Rens and Pheylop, and our special guest, Riot Afic. You see him sitting there across the meeting table on the other side. Afic, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I'm going to start with our normal questions to you. First of all, most of your involvement has to do with playtest, design, that kind of stuff. But I want to hear how has been playing the game been for you, as well as how did you choose your name?
So playing the game has been pretty good for me. I played most of my games recently over the past week or so. I generally watch more than I play, but went on vacation this week, so I had a lot of free time and finally got to do some grinding. But yeah, it's been pretty good with the exception of kind of jam 5 costs into the comps. Other than that, playing the game's been pretty good. The way I got my name is this has actually been my gamer tag for a long time. I have 2 middle names, so AFIC are actually just my initials.
Oh, okay.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, that's sweet. All right. And Rens, Pheylop, how's the laddering been going? How's the streaming been going? I guess Pheylop hasn't had a whole lot of that because Pheylop's been out of town. But yeah, how's it been?
Yeah, I mean, pretty good. I got Challenger on NA today, so that's pretty nice. I played some EU games. I've been watching more as well, though. I've been watching a lot of Hydras and 23 stream.
Yeah.
And I think I've learned a lot from them, and yeah, I feel pretty confident. So yeah, I think I'm playing decent at least, and it's been fun. So yeah.
Awesome.
Pretty good. I'm only a little bit sick today, though, but...
Yeah, you've been sick for a bit now, right?
yeah, for a few days, but...
That sucks. Pheylop, how was your I don't know what to call it, art trip?
Well, I was at Gen Con, so it was just a big gaming convention. I walked about 50 miles in 4 days, so I got a shin splint, and that's been fun for the last 2 days. I bought a bunch of paintings, so that was nice. I had a fun time learning some new games, buying some games, testing some games that aren't released yet. And then I came back. I think my MMR is pretty low. I got 6 plays. I lost 51 points. And then...
Wait, for 5th?
For 6th.
Oh, 6th. Okay, yeah, I had the same thing.
Yeah. And then I got 2 fourths. I got 5 points each. So now I'm back to 10 points in Challenge.
Perfect.
How about you?
Me? Well... as I was saying earlier in our Discord channel, I may have been affected, or I definitely was affected by some bug, because they made it now so that if you lose a game at 0 LP Challenger, you do demote to Diamond 1. That's just how it is. It's your 0 LP Master, Grandmaster, whatever, you demote to Diamond. Well, I got 3rd at 0 LP in Challenger. I got a 3rd place, and it was a high-ranked lobby. Like, everyone in there was pretty much a Challenger. There's a couple of people that are Diamond, but it's pretty much everyone was Challenger. Demoted. It's like, what? Apparently it's a bug. I don't know if it's going to get fixed or not, but... sorry, not fixed, but, I don't know if it's going to be, fixed for me. Alright, just to get that rank back. Probably have to do that, but... Yeah, so that kind of sucked, but... Overall, I feel like I've been, the last couple of days, I feel like I've understood the meta a lot more than I had before, so... Which, I guess, makes sense. Anyway... Afic, we're gonna have some questions for you. Afic, for those who don't know, he's on the, correct me if I'm wrong on this, you are on the playtest team for TFT at Riot, right? Like specifically for TFT?
No, actually. So I'm on the playtest team for League of Legends, and we help with TFT.
Okay, because I see you involved in everything TFT.
Yes, so from the playtest team, I'm owning the partnership between our team and their team.
Gotcha.
So that's why I've been the go-to contact, but I am not explicitly on the team.
Okay. Good to know.
Yes.
So, first thing I want to ask you, as TFT's been developed, designed, all that, has anything that really stuck out to you as being really frustrating to get right, or as well on the other side of that, the flip side of that, anything that's been you feel like you got it right, it's been perfect, everything's just gone awesome for that? Anything while designing TFT?
Yeah, so super broad question. I don't want to spend the whole time answering just that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so for the stuff that's been frustrating, it's just game development in general. A lot of the time I want to understand the gameplay and get into the nitty gritty balance aspect of it, but the game isn't ready for so long until then, be it bugs, be it, incomplete visuals, incomplete systems. It is very difficult to get the whole thing, just get playing it before it's all done. So that's probably one of the more frustrating things. Some of the stuff that's gone well, I remember when we were testing out Blitzcrank, when it was first implemented in a janky way, and I remember that it was so goofy, it kind of reminded me at first of watching Tiny and Dak, and then just being oh, every game needs their kind of go-to goofy guy that does something really weird. And Blitzcrank eventually became viable, but for a while he was just kind of this goofy thing where the hook did a really weird lobbing animation. It would just yank someone back, and it was hilarious, but it was hilarious in what I thought was a good way. So it was nice seeing that evolve a little.
Tiny ended up being viable too. It just
Exactly.
It just took 8 buffs, and then eventually got there. Awesome. So going off of the bringing up DAC, is there anything that you guys have really tried to differentiate yourselves from the other auto battlers out there, like Underlords and TFT and a few other ones out there? Or sorry, not like TFT, but auto chess. Any ways you guys have tried to really differentiate yourselves? I have a few in my mind, obviously, but from your guys' perspective.
Right. So I think there are a few of the obvious ones, like the carousel is obviously different. Yeah. The hexes are different. The thing about at least my experience with Dak, and this is going to be speaking mostly from personal experience, really liked the game, pretty much everything about it, except the queue times. I remember the exact time where I stopped playing was I was queuing, I was rook 9 or something. I was queuing up, trying to make that queen push. Could not find an NA lobby forever. Got frustrated, eventually did an EU lobby. In the game, I was forced into doing a harder econ strat, and then needed to do a big all-in turn and reroll. And doing that on 200 ping, you don't need me to tell you the frustration there. So for me, it's it's the genre that I enjoy, and then I've actually been playing League of Legends for 10 years. So seeing the IP I love and the game I love combined with this genre, that did it for me. That was all of it. So combining that with the ranking system and not needing to play on 200 ping, so those were the big wins in my mind.
That's awesome. Yeah, all three of us are well aware of the the ping issues that you go into on those big reroll turns.
Yeah.
Ren's a little less so because he had to play in Europe for a while, but eventually he had to play in China as well, like the rest of us. So.
Yeah, I'm done with that. But I kind of maybe I don't know if you can answer it. Can you give me more perspective on the board? Why did you guys make it so different from a normal a chessboard in DAC? Can you go more into that, or?
I don't have the best context there. A lot of it was it wanted to add more depth in kind of options you could do, or actually one of the biggest gains was visual clarity. So when you have a 4 or it was 8x8, it's all vertical and horizontal.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a bigger unit, the unit that is directly above it, it's kind of blocked. With a hex setup, the unit that is directly above it is actually slightly to the right or left. That was one of the things that started the conversation. And it's not because again, I focus almost entirely on gameplay, and I really don't empathize with the thematics quite as much as I'd like to, or stuff like that. So for me, it's I actually don't need to see it because I know what the unit is, I know its health, and I care about the outcome. So I preferred the other setup, but at the end of the day, I understand that visual clarity does have a lot of importance, even if it's not important for me.
Yeah,
but isn't it so important that they made the board smaller? That has an enormous gameplay impact, right?
Yes. So we've done iterations where it was bigger, and a lot of funky stuff happens when you make everything shrunk down. Then it got to the point where you couldn't really see the abilities as well. There wasn't as much space for the bench. The hexes didn't line up as evenly as a grid did for maximizing space on a screen. And I remember in early alpha when we had some initial tests on it, the biggest point of feedback was that the board felt too small. This was actually before the leveling pacing was set in stone. It used to be a 10 level, just like Dax. You could go to level 10. The pacing was much more consistent. And we found that, like, you know, with 4 or 5 units or 6 units even on the board, that bigger space isn't as much of an issue. It's when you get like 7, 8, 9, or 10 units that it really starts to feel cluttered. So then we made the change that actually completely revamped the pacing of the game, what strategies are good, and you know, that's what now 9 is the max level. So obviously that has implications. All that said, I think we're still open to the idea of increasing the size of the board. I personally like it more with the extra row, but you know, that's something we'll be looking to improve in the future.
And when we say extra row, I assume we mean an extra row on both sides, right? Not
Correct,
a neutral in the middle. Okay.
We actually had iterations of that as well. In League of Legends, there's kind of like a river dividing the map. So when we tested it, it was going to be a river, but it just didn't pan out for a bunch of different reasons.
Walk over the river.
Yeah, pretty much. It was like a neutral zone, right?
Yeah. DMZ.
Hey, they have in Dota too. I mean, yeah, everyone has a river. It's fine.
Yeah.
Just have a river.
So one thing, last week we had Aleko on the show.
Aleko, yeah.
And we got really into talking about lose streaking, which has been a really popular topic in general, especially among the DAC players who have been familiar with that.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys made a change last week that had a lot of implications for that, which was reducing damage taken.
Yes.
And what I want to hear your thoughts, because it was interesting how you guys did it. It actually wasn't, even though it did end up affecting lose streaking a lot. This last week we figured out it didn't actually have that immediate thought towards it, because the change was actually to late game damage, not early game damage. So I'm curious about your guys' thought process behind that, of why you focus on more of the late game damage rather than the early game damage.
So it was also in combination with like spiderlings and all that stuff having its damage nerfed. So there was some early game implication. It's a tough balance, because one of the goals of this game is to have the timing be, you know, ideally around 30 minutes. I'm not sure exactly what our target is. And like, you know, again, I'm going to focus on, I prefer the higher gameplay stuff that I personally enjoy. I like those drawn out 1v1s where you're making minor tweaks and it's a slugfest. I also understand that there are, you know, hundreds of thousands of players who queue up in a 30-minute slot and want an experience. So it's kind of a balance between the two. I think this was a less disruptive way of kind of bringing down the tail end, but keeping the average closer.
Interesting. Trying to parse this. So pretty much, you want it was your way of overall. You want I feel like if you focus on the early game, you'd slow the game down a little bit too much. Is kind of what you're saying,
right? Because then, like 7th and 8th people, they're committed to a minimum time that is longer, and you know, on average, everyone's going to be in game longer.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. And then just one more question before we move on to our first topic. It's about so you guys are doing updates every week right now. You're doing the A/B schedule. So you have a big patch and a smaller patch, and it's been really like for someone myself that is really into the game and plays the game a lot. It's been really fun. I enjoy quick change like that. Obviously I want to be able to figure out the meta and all that, but I'm curious about your guys'. There's been a lot of like discussion on that on both sides of like, is it too fast or is it just right? Or I've seen people talk about, is it too slow? But that isn't.
Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. So I'm curious about your thoughts, or I guess your guys' philosophy towards that, of what kind of pace you want to be updating the game. How quickly do you want the metagame to be changing?
Sure.
So yeah.
I think right now the best answer I can give is it isn't as well defined as it could be. You know, part of it is we're not going to know till we try, and in 9.16 at least, like that's a pretty big change, and this will be a good measurement to see what too much looks like, right? The best way you know that you're finding the right pace is you find the outer bounds. Like, okay, this is clearly too much. This is clearly too little. The right answer is somewhere in between. Right now, I think we have a pretty good idea of what too little looks like. And I'm not quite sure what too much looks like. That unfortunately means we will likely do too much changing in the near future. possibly 916. But more likely, longer term, what that'll get us is we'll understand what is best for player base in general, as opposed to just small subset of that.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So sorry. Go ahead, Rens.
So you guys did some like hot fixes on like like what was it, Frozen Heart and stuff. Like, are you guys gonna do maybe some small hot fixes after patches? Let's say it's quite obvious right now that Carthage is way too broken. Do you think it's like possible, like after one day, it's quite obvious that he was already like way too busted? Let's say after 2 days and not after a week, where like you're like, let's tweak the numbers down a bit. It's quite obvious. So just tune him down, like it's a little too obvious, and then just keep the rest the same. Or are you just gonna do only bug fix hot fixes and then just wait like at least a week for those guys?
I think it is heavily contextualized and it depends on a lot of things. For Karthus, definitely agree he's too strong. I don't think it quite hits the need for a hot fix. So for a little more context, sure. Hot fixes are inherently risky. They have a non-trivial chance of like having significant ripple effects throughout the game. We've broken them in the past, and it's more of a, is the risk worth the reward? I think for Karthus, like, yes, he's too strong. Yes, he dictates late game power. There's still a good 25 minutes of gameplay, and there's still sure. some stuff you can do about Karthus. And then more importantly, it's also important to give the meta time to adapt, right?
For sure.
For all we know, a counter does exist. We're just not clever enough to find it yet. I'm still convinced that, and maybe not convinced, but like I expected to see more people prioritizing things like Zephyr to counter stuff like that. That's probably not the best example, but point being that you want to give some time for counters to develop as well.
Right.
Yeah, of course. Like you see more dragons, right? You just see more dragons coming.
Right.
So
well, we saw that. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
It's fine though, but I totally get that. I was just like let's say one thing is just like Karthus maybe is just an example, right? Let's say one unit is way too strong, like after one day. I mean, it's obvious, like then it's not going to be hot fixed. Like Karthus was kind of a example.
My understanding, especially with the new content that's coming out in 9.16, is we will be very quick to micro or hot fix any like real outliers. I think
like Lock of the Iron Solari type stuff again.
Yeah, right, like the Yasuo fun times. It's a little difficult because the line for like clearly needs a hotfix is still a bit undefined, and we're kind of like figuring that out as we go. Again, that's like partly why this is still in beta. But once that stuff is more well defined and we understand when players are frustrated with it or when they're happy about it, that again, you want to see too much, you want to see too little, and then the right answer somewhere in between.
Okay, sure.
Okay, we can go on to our first topic. All right. So, first topic we're going to be talking about. This might look like we're talking about Karthus, but we're not. Talk about synergies. I want to talk about first the healthiness surrounding synergies, and healthiness might be a bit too I don't know, overbearing of a term almost, but more along the lines of kind of the fun as well as the skill in using a synergy, versus the control that the player has is a lot of what Rens and Pheylop and I are gonna want to focus on as players. But some people just it's a lot about the fun and all that about it. So examples of this are which is in the picture, like Phantom. Phantom is something that I think between us we universally are not huge fans of because it can swing a fight so drastically based on RNG. But a synergy like Elementalists or Guardians or Dragons, stuff that you have a bit more thought behind, like Elementalists and Guardians are like tech options you can put in your team to counter someone else. Elementalists give you cool positioning you can do to spawn the golem somewhere, and it's also just very consistent. So I'm curious about your guys's. I'm gonna send this to you right away, Afic, and then we'll discuss it a bit more. Just about your guys's philosophy, like. How much are you okay with effects like, and it's not just like Phantom, but also less extreme effects of that. Like there's demon and glacial effects like that I feel like they're a little bit less control versus a little bit more control by the player with elementals and guardians. I don't know, and I'm curious about not just that, but what do you guys consider as healthy? Because I think what you guys would consider as healthy and was fun for the player, and this is true for like especially with other to other players, is gonna be different than what we expect or what we think. So I'm curious about your guys' thoughts on that. It's a long question. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm just gonna start with first kind of my definition of health in terms of this type of stuff. The way I look at it is satisfaction to use versus frustration against.
Okay.
I think Phantom is a good example of one that scores pretty lowly on that, or pretty low on that measurement. Right, like if you know, like, hey, I'm this sorcerer Cho'Gath player. I know he's my big thing. I have him in the back line with a rapid fire cannon because I decided to do that for some reason.
Yeah.
I'm staring directly at him for the entire fight. He gets Phantom and then killed by a Shiv instantly. Like, that feels real bad. For the other player, however, the Phantom player, they might not even have noticed it, right? Like, obviously, a more attentive player will, but you know, that's the type of thing where if it gets done to you in a, you know, powerful way, it ruins it. Whereas if you do it to someone else, you might not even notice it. So in terms of like Glacial, I think that one actually does much better.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think the same thing. Yeah.
The visuals help it a lot, right? Like it's, hey, this is this thing right here. You know, a lot of attention is to it. There's still like some tension between, is it going to break free and cast its spell? Is it going to die before then? That type of stuff. Demon a lot less so because it was so rampant that you actually just didn't, your kit or your champion's kits or your comp's like strategy didn't get to do the things it wanted to do. So I think that's my quick take on which ones work and a good way to look at how effective they are in terms of gameplay health. In terms of like the power and impact they have, that's a little more tricky. I don't think it's as well defined as it should be. I think one thing that higher level players, myself included, I'm going to include myself there, that we care more about is like deterministic outcomes or like controlling every aspect of it. I personally prefer that because I want to demonstrate mastery and take every advantage I can and use those advantages to guarantee a win. One of the design goals around this game is that there actually should be some fight variance. So things like Phantom, things like chance on hit to stun from Glacial, stuff like that directly plays into the variance of, you know, the fights aren't deterministic. I hope we could all agree that if all fights were deterministic, it would be less exciting. However, there is definitely a happy medium that we're probably not at yet.
Okay. Yeah. I talked about this before. That I really like to play in a way where I know that I'm going to win something. I know I'm going to lose something. But in terms of the excitement, like in DAC, I often wouldn't even watch the battle. I just wouldn't care. I would just like look at the shop and think. In this, I'm way more paying attention to the battle, which is actually a bad thing in DAC. Like just watch the battle to figure out there are certain things you would do, but I wouldn't anyway. But yeah, I think that's a point I haven't really thought about much. Is that yeah, it's really important just to like the excitement of watching the battle and like, you know, kind of like, honestly cheering for a unit sometimes, right? I think we've all done that to some extent.
Don't you feel like positioning should be like the reward for like, and not the variance of like, let's say Phantom, but like your positioning should be like the skill or like where do you put your Hush unit, right? Like the positioning should like reward like how the fight plays out, and not like, let's say, a Fent. Like it you can have it in the game, but it's less. Like I feel like positioning like can be like the biggest thing. Like you don't want to be the exact same fight happening every single time, right? But then you have positioning where you can get an advantage, right? That's what I really like.
Here's the thing though, Rens. Like at the same time, before the night changes, positioning mattered more for a night comp, and now that they changed it, positioning matters less for a night comp. I think that we would both agree that we like the new night changes more than the way nights worked before, right? So it's not, yeah. Like I don't think it all comes down to like positioning should be what matters.
Okay. Well, I mean, I was just talking about the variance of a fight. And you can change the variance of a fight by moving your units to a different space. And then the fight can be different, right? That was what I was going for. And like not saying have a mechanic like Phantom that basically can dictate the fight if you win or lose.
So both of those definitely are important. So another one of the like design goals was that positioning should matter. More than just like tanky guys in the front, DPS guys in the back. But like serious question, how much of that should be determined by positioning? How much of it should be fight by fight variance, right? Let's say two armies are equally powered. Should the person who positions better win like 70% of the time? Should it be closer to 50? I actually don't know. I think that's the thing we kind of need to work through to figure out. So something like Phantom, in my opinion, almost certainly swings too hard, right? Like if you 1 out of 8 hit their carries, like cool, that fight actually just didn't matter and the game can end. I perceive that to be too much. I also think that like, if it were just some number of units got reduced to half health, like it still has some variance, but it isn't as punishing one way or the other. The real question is what is the right answer, and that's hard to prove.
For me, it would be if both comms are equal in skill, the better positioning wins basically 100% of the. But that's just probably me, right? That's just how I like to play the game. So that's from my perspective.
Any competitive player will have, like truly competitive top 0.1% will have that same opinion. So I can definitely understand that.
But I can see it. Of course, you don't want to like do everything for that. I can totally see that, of course. But it's just like my view.
But Rens, there's a reason that like the four of us here, we're not like StarCraft 2 players, right? Like we definitely still want there to be like things outside our control. Like I think like it's probably closer to like 75%. Like when you're equally powered and you set up better, you should win a lot more of the time, but you shouldn't win all the time. Like you can still get lucked out, and like I think that's fine.
No, I think I don't agree with that. I think for me it should be 100. Like there are already a lot of luck.
I think
involved, and I think. Go for it.
Like, so here's how I've looked at RNG a lot of the time. I like I like RNG to come first. I want to have RNG and make my decisions, and then those decisions lead to something. Rather than I have RNG making then I make a decision, and then RNG determines if my decision caused my decision to be successful, right? There's an order that I think is very important, and in this game, and it's always going to exist like this, it'll exist in DSC as well, is that it's both. You have RNG at the beginning and the end. And that's fine. It just, again, that's what we're talking about, is how much of it at the end should exist, or how much of it should exist in total. But for me, like, when talking about StarCraft compared to DSC, that kind of thing, I really want there to be the RNG, and then I make my decision based off of that. I don't want it to be, like, I make a decision, and then, like, well, I hope this works. I hate that feeling of, well, I hope this works. I like the feeling of, okay, I made the decision, it should work. And then I find out, not based off RNG, I just find out if I'm wrong or not.
So on that note, presumably there's a scenario in which, like, your early RNG low rolled and you're actually behind. In the world where it's now deterministic, the outcome, like, hey, they got the better RNG earlier, then you don't have any options though, right? So it goes hand in hand with like rooting for your army when you want it to win, hoping it's back and forth. There's also something to be gained for, like, if you're the underdog army, sometimes when you win, like, that actually creates really high moments, really memorable moments. So it's a tough balance. I definitely understand. And, like, again, I lean towards the side of controlling everything and better player wins. But, yeah, it's tough.
It's only about the whole, like, they have the better RNG, so they're going to win because we have the RNG at the end. That's, you have to look at, did they make the correct decisions with that RNG that they were given, right? That's like what I like to see, is I like to have the possibility that I made the better decisions even with the worst RNG, which got me to a victory.
But I was just basically talking about like the positioning of fight. Of course, I get RNG with draws, opponents. I totally that should be a thing, because you can with draws you can make like calculated decisions, right? Like spend my money here. I eco here. I think I'm decently strong. Blah blah. But I think for me, it was just the fight RNG would be nice for me.
Rens, do you think that critical strikes should just happen every 4th auto attack, or do you think that having a 25% spread is okay?
Oh, that would be nice. Yeah, it would be very nice.
So you would
Every
rather
fourth
have it be
attack.
just every 4th auto attack?
Yeah.
But
is it the
would you
second one that
care
starts?
if the cycle started at a random point? So, like, if the first attack crits, it's be another 4 attacks until the next crit. Like, where do
This
you
is a
want the
long
RNG to
rabbit
start,
hole.
and where do you want the RNG to, like, you know, like, where do you want it to be?
Every 4th attack.
I think it's I mean I think it's clear that like you'd prefer that, you know, all of that's gone. I think it's a totally fair take, and it's
For fights, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Obviously I know you don't want all RNG in the game to be gone. You wouldn't be playing the game
Yeah,
if that was the case.
I don't play this game. Right?
yeah.
I'll play something.
But yeah, I think it's a fair take. You know, I'm somewhere where like, yeah, I'm fine with crits existing. What I don't like personally is the fight RNG that makes fights really swingy. That's what feels bad to me. The fact where like, you know, I'll take 20 damage or you'll take 20 damage. There's not really an in between there. Just like I'm like, you know, if the fact like I'm way stronger than you, except if this happens, that you know, that kind of feeling. And then I just get destroyed. You know. That's what I don't like. You know, if it's like this fight RNG, it's like, well, you know, he wins by 2 units, I win by 2 units, or, you know, even if it's like, you know, I win the fight, or he barely wins or barely loses, you know, that kind of thing is fine.
I totally agree with you, and of course this crit was just an example, an exaggeration. I don't really mind the crits being a bit random, right? Like, let's be honest, this was like trying to push me into like a corner. It's just what my what I would like to see the most. Of course, I don't really mind the crits.
Yeah. I mean, it's just to illustrate, like,
exactly.
the idea in a more obvious way for people to kind of be able to process it.
Okay. You have thought?
No, just go ahead.
Okay. There's new champions coming out. I assume everyone here knows that, but for those that don't watching, that there are new champions come out. My assumption is this is next week. I don't know if Afic can say one or the other. I'm assuming he can't, but I'm assuming this is next week, but I don't know.
It's slated for 9/16, and 9/16 should have a scheduled target date. I'll let you piece it together from there.
Wait, 9/16 might not be next week, is what you're saying?
It might not. I'm pretty sure it is. Like, there's always a chance we have to push the patches back.
Okay.
But it is. These changes are scheduled for 9/16.
Okay. So yeah, I'll quickly go over these. So first of all, hextech is a synergy that will how it's working currently. It just got changed like yesterday or the day before that. It just got changed where it's gonna throw, I believe it's a mine at the start of the fight, and then by 1 hex at 2 hextech, 2 hexes at 4 hextech, it will disable all the items around in that hex around that unit that has an item. They target a unit with an item randomly. Disable all the items there for 8 seconds. Afic, am I on the right track there?
That sounds like the most recent iteration. Yes.
Okay. Guys, if you can read between the lines, guys, that means it's changing again.
No. That's the most recent iteration internally as well.
Okay.
That was good though.
So quickly, these are Camille, who's a hextech blade master. I'm not gonna. The abilities on the screen if you guys want to read those. There's Jace, which is a hextech shapeshifter, Vi, which is a hextech brawler, and Jinx, which is a hextech gunslinger. Those are at 1, 2, 3, and 4 cost. One thing that really interests me, by the way, is that it seems like they're trying to prevent overloading. Like they want to keep it kind of reliable in terms of finding units of each cost, while spreading them out in this way of having a 1 cost, a 2 cost, a 3 cost, and a 4 cost makes it so you're not changing the odds that much for finding units still.
That's good.
Am I on the right track there? I think that's like kind of the reasoning behind spreading it out like this.
That definitely plays into it. We're still not sure what like the best number of units to have is. I know in auto chess it's somewhere between 50 and 60, so it stands to reason that is also likely what's best for TFT.
Okay. So yeah, what's your Oh yeah, actually, we do have one question about this. Question for you, about this, Afic. Is about just like what so Hex, like, what's your guys' philosophy behind the behind hextech as an origin? Like, what was your purpose for creating it? Yeah.
Sure. So I don't have full context, so I'm going to be giving my opinion or my interpretation of it. So take it with a grain of salt. If the thought is that items determine the winner of a game too frequently, this offers some degree of at least a chance of meaningful counterplay, or at least a chance of counterplay to combat that. I think one of the things we want is more counters in terms of which units you decide to put on the field, as opposed to which items you had access to counter. For example, countering assassins with Phantom Dancer, while it's effective, sometimes you're at the dragon round and there's exactly one carousel left before the game ends, and that's just not going to happen. Whereas something like, it's Naga in auto chess for the MR. So this is a way of countering something.
Okay. Rens and Pheylop, what's your guys' thoughts so far overall on these? Like, is there any of these champions like super interested in that you're excited for?
I think an extra shapeshifter would be nice, because I think the thing about, I really like to play shapeshifter, but they're kind of bad. But that's also because like you have 2 1-cost shapeshifters and they're kind of bad late game.
Yeah.
And then the other shapeshifter like Shyvana that's like an awesome unit. And it's a 3-cost, it's perfect, right? But then you have Gnar and Swain, which is like really hard to get sometimes because they're 4th and 5th. So sometimes you end up with like a 2 1-cost shapeshifters and a 3-cost, and then those 2 1-costs kind of like, they're not really worth playing, right? They're just too weak. So it would be nice to have like another middle shapeshifter, and it would be better for the mid game. So I'm excited to see that.
2-star Gnar never happens in wild shapeshifters ever. Never.
No. I mean, you should not run wild anyway, I think, but for sure. That's true.
So a little bit about the origin. I want to talk about the origin too. Is that okay?
Yeah.
It's kind of strange. Like I've heard both sides of this. I haven't tested myself if it's on PvE, but like I heard that like it doesn't affect special items, taking away bonuses since it's applied being a fighter ready. Is that like? Does anyone know how it actually works? Like, does it take away like classes?
I know we talked about it the other day of what the expectation is. So the fact that the expectation isn't clear is already like a flag, like a red flag. I think what we were talking about is it does not take away the trait; it'll just take away the stats.
Okay.
I think don't quote me on that, but I believe that was the context of like.
Yeah,
I like that. You don't want to kill.
Yeah, because obviously you can't neutralize force of nature and just take out a unit, right?
Right. That was literally the edge of like, okay, what do we do with force of nature? Like, ooh.
So it just makes sense to kind of probably protect like the special units as far as like the actual like the special trait versus like the actual stats. The stats can go away. That's fine. As far as these units themselves, I'm super excited about Jinx. 4-cost Gunslinger is interesting. And that reads like a hyper carry, and that sounds kind of fun. So I'm kind of excited to see how it goes. I tried to play a Gunslinger game recently, and like I leveled up like things like pretty reasonably. And I still felt super like shitty weak, like real bad.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you need Gunslingers definitely need like a 4-cost carry in their comp, and
yeah, this seems like exactly what they need.
It's gonna boost them a lot, which is good because you don't have to roll for 3 stars to win the game.
Yeah, I mean, how many times? I feel like it's not even like rare to see people be like, I guess I have to put Blade Masters and Draven into my Gunslinger comp so I have a carry. Like, I feel like that's happened to like at least everyone here at least a few times where you're like, I guess I'll play 3 Blade Masters and Draven and hope my Draven kills people. Where like your Gunslingers kind of pepper them down and like do a bunch of AOE. But
yeah, that's what I'm super excited for personally is Jinx. Like, I've always kind of liked Gunslingers. Like the one fun for me to play. I love just tons of repetitive AoE damage and applying, effects like Hush and Disarm and Curse Blade and all that. It just feels very, very fun. Oh, Titanic Hydra as well. I used to love Titanic Hydra. So the fact that I don't have to hyper roll every single game I go Gunslingers, 'cause that's like a requirement of them right now. Seems very, very, very awesome. So there's something that interests me as well. Is the design of Vi. So we've had it's pretty much been the case for all of TFT to the point where we don't even talk about it anymore, is that TFT is a game where you have a carry and you build around the carry. That's just how it's been. Which wasn't really that way in DAC. I don't feel like sometimes it was. Like there was obviously stuff like Troll Warlord and Dragon Knight that were very, you focus on a carry, but a lot of time it was much more of a cohesive team comp that did damage together. But I thought Vi seems like a way that that is offering a way to break that up a little bit. If you'd want to speak on that a little bit, Afic. It seems like that you guys are trying to introduce ways that maybe people have to not go all in on one carry.
Yeah, that's absolutely kind of the goal of Vi. She kind of does what Blitzcrank does, except in the middle of a fight in a more disruptive way, where all those corner units that were the bait for Blitzcrank are now gone, and then Vi can murder the Draven or whoever.
Oh, I didn't even think about running them together because they're both brawlers. Yeah.
Yep. So that's been, that's particularly potent. So if people are, that again plays into the kind of thematic of hextech, like, hey, you're doing this to counter these people who are stacking all their items on one character. It's like, well, if you really have a hyper carry, they're much harder to defend if a Vi is in the game. So I'm not entirely sure what that will do, but it will hopefully add a lot more decision making, more tech options, more pivot options, and things you can do in general to counter what's handed to you.
I have a random kind of a flavorful question. As you guys add more origins and stuff to the game, is it gonna be weird that some stuff isn't under a different origin? Like now that hextech is a thing, it's kind of like it feels funny that Blitzcrank not be hextech. Like as you guys go forward, like do you think you're ever gonna like errata things, or like do you think that'll affect the balance too much, or like do you think it'll like you'll cycle units out and back in as different things? I just want to kind of ask it that way.
I am very confident that everything is still on the table. So making Blitzcrank Hextech, sure, probably has a lot of balance implications, but I wouldn't be surprised if we did something like that. It's more that we're going to have goals we want to accomplish, and then find ways to iterate towards those goals, as opposed to, hey, this thing might be cool. What happens if we do it? Ideally, we have a little bit more intent with what we decide to do, as opposed to just kind of throwing stuff on the wall and seeing what sticks.
Wasn't there a Twitter post that said that the idea, or there was at least an idea, to reintroduce champions with a new skin and give them a different origin?
Yep. So for future sets that happen, I think there's there's an intent that the skin a champion has, so that's like the League of Legends cosmetic of distinguishing that character from a fancier version of that character, will come with different origins. So Yasuo right now is Blade Master Exile. Project Yasuo might be like some, I don't know, mech, not mech. Some
Goblin mech.
I don't know.
Goblin mech.
Thematics are not my strength. I stick to the gameplay.
Yeah.
Me too. I would have never known that Blitzcrank should be a hextech. That was like, oh yeah, I guess you should be a hextech.
Yeah. But like, if you look at the Graves and Twisted Fate, those are both actually the pirate skins. Those aren't the base skins.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would never notice.
Vayne is Arclight, which is more of like the yellowy thing to have the noble feel, where her base skin does not look like that.
I had Arclight Vayne, so that one I actually think I knew. Or at least I recognized her.
So that exact thing does already exist, and I would expect more of it.
So we're not gonna see, let's say in DAC you had like when you 3-star unit, right? It gets like a whole new skin.
Yeah.
We're not gonna see something like that here. You just make like skins according to their origin or the synergy.
There are some pretty non-trivial tech issues as well with like preloading skins. And skins have a whole lot of animations associated with them, where if we had every skin load in for every character, it's just not something we can currently support. So that's why they have like the silver shimmer and then the gold shimmer at 3-star. I think that was one of my biggest like concerns in development, was that the coolest thing is getting the 3-star, zooming in, doing the first person mode, swirling around it, and like feeling good about the unit you finally pieced together. So I am a bit sad that isn't currently supported to the same extent, but I am also pretty happy with where we ended up, given the limitations we had.
I still right-click units a lot of the time to see what star they are, but I am colorblind, so maybe
that's understandable.
I mean, TFT runs way smoother than DSC, right? DSC had a lot of problems with Like it had a lot of it was very heavy for your FPS.
Oh.
You needed a good PC to actually run that game.
Actually, I want to say one thing about that. I want to give credit to where it's due. Our engineers on the team, still can't get over the amount of work they did. So when people ask, like, what's with all these movement pathing bugs, it's like the person who implemented that also made sure the game loads correctly. So would you rather the game run at all or have the moving be like perfect? It's like, that's a real trade-off, because fixing that stuff is not easy. But yeah, they've done a great job, and I'm looking forward to the improvements they'll continue to make.
Were you saying
I just had a random comment about the skins thing, where I was like, I remember the first day I was playing TFT, and I got my level 3 Garen, and it wasn't God Emperor Garen or whatever. I was like, what is this? Like, why is it just like this like gold Garen? Or like when Darius has become like this like super scary like wolf giant Darius with an axe. And I was like kind of disappointed, but now I've kind of gotten used to it again. So it's like fine.
Yeah.
But we can dream, I think.
I mean, it was just a really fun thing in DSC.
Yeah, I mean, just like making the PA3 and like how PA2 looked versus PA3 was like the difference, right?
Fun fact, I'm not sure if this is still the case. In DAC, the first time a player 3 stars a unit, the game hitches. And that is a result of the content getting loaded in because they don't preload 3-star content.
Juggernaut always liked the game no matter what. Juggernaut always liked the game no matter what as a 3-star.
Okay, so they might not have preloaded that stuff as well, or there might be something else going on.
Yeah.
But
that skin was ridiculous too, right? Like there's like some like weird like dragon that like floats around like all over the map.
But wasn't it just funny that like the game lags when someone gets a 3-star jug? Like everyone.
It was great. It was great.
Everyone knew.
Dude, 3-star Juggernaut my favorite unit.
Funny.
I loved it. And then like Juggernaut looked badass. Like God. Anyway, more current things. There's a patch tomorrow. This is from last week. I assume this stuff has changed by now. I mean, stuff got added, maybe stuff got removed. I don't know. I assume it's a little bit different because this was all, set to be changed. Or I can't think of the term for it, but ready to be changed at any point. So this was posted last week, a few days after the patch went live. They're looking at buffing Elise, Twisted Fate, Veigar, and Runens, nerfing Pike, Rengar, and Karthus, and then bug fixing Static Shiv. That's not like a real nerf; it's a bug fix.
It ends up being a nerf, but yeah.
I think I already saw a tweet that the Twisted Fate buff is not going through.
Yep.
Oh, really? Okay.
So it's gonna be not changed, but that's just a sign.
Okay, good to know. Yeah, I think that's smart. I mean, it makes sense because everyone thought Twisted Fate sucked, and then like pretty quickly people were like, actually, Twisted Fate, you put Ludens on him. Wait, no, actually, just in general, he's actually not that bad.
Yeah.
Is there anything you guys think that maybe shouldn't be on here, or that you think is missing, something that you are hoping that is added, that we don't know about yet? Rens
Sure.
Or Afic, yeah, go.
Oh yeah, sorry. I think the first one that might be missing is Cho'Gath.
Yep.
I'm a little torn there because I think he's kind of like a release valve to Karthus in a sense, where he's probably the best answer to him for reliably disrupting him. That's the one that stands out to me, at least.
The best support for Karthus as well.
Yeah, right. Right.
I think Cho is fine without Void. The Void thing makes him so strong on 2-star. It's like he literally almost one-shots 2-star unit.
I think it's 3-star. It's
Yeah,
a combination.
Okay, well. Yeah. It's sorry, I have to say 3-Sork. 3-Sork is like overtuned as well. But yeah, I think Cho as a unit, let's say Cho'Gath kind of needs a little bit of
I don't think they need to nerf Static Shiv or like bug fix it. I think they should just reword it so it functions as it currently does.
Oh, you think it's actually just fine right now, even in the early game?
Yeah, I think it's fine right now.
You just want it to be a strong early game item. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you're using like good late game items to make a strong early game item. Like that makes sense.
That's fair. Those are good. Those are like some
if
top
you
tier.
nerf Static Shiv, no one's up build it. Like that's kind of against the purpose of it, you know. Like that's the way I view it, at least. If they nerf it and everyone keeps building it, then maybe I'm wrong. But like it feels like items should have like when they're good affect how powerful they are at different points in the game, right?
I think it's a valid take because both Tier and Recur Bow, like, they are late game items because they're like it's a percentage based thing and it's mana, right? They're, in terms of late game, like that's what you want. Like you look at like an early game item would be, you'd expect it to be like, you know, Giant's Belt and BF swords, you know, flat increases. So yeah, that's actually, I like that. That take a lot.
So the bug fix, actually, it is still intended to be like an early game item, and I don't expect this to do too much. The bug fix is when there are 2 units left. You expect it to do 90 damage to each. It does 90 damage to one, and then 270 damage to the other.
Oh, I thought it did 180 to each.
I don't believe so.
Oh, okay.
Or last time I checked, that's not what it did. It might have changed. Either way, like it should still be very dominant early, but just a minor tweak.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just definitely down for the 4 procs lightning, no matter what.
Yeah.
So
oh really? Damn.
The
Yeah,
pike,
that's really
the pike change is really surprising to me because I was saying recently I've been talking up Pike, but I feel like he's underused. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but I feel like he's underused. I feel like he's super strong. I don't know if I would nerf him. But I feel like he's super strong. It was really surprising to me to see Pike on here under the nerf bat. And I know Rens was talking about it earlier when we were preparing. He was bringing up Pike. It was like,
Yeah. I mean, I felt like Pike is like in a very good state. He's very strong, but like you want to probably you can itemize him and you can even way stronger, but items are most of the time better on other units, so he's not like particularly dominant most of the time. He's just a very good unit, and he's not. I don't think he's too broken right now. I think he's at a good spot. So I don't really get this nerf either that much.
Yeah, I think that one's a bit more interesting to me as well. One of the things I've noticed about Pike lately is like, since blitzcranks are becoming more common with brawlers being as viable as they are, I'm seeing fewer people like hard corner, and I'm more seeing people like kind of just position around their carry in the back middle. And Pike does particularly well against those because he gets to one corner and then he jumps across to the other side and is able to stun everyone. I also don't think he necessarily needed a nerf, but he'll still fulfill his function as he needs to.
All right, that's good. Maybe some less starting manas.
Yeah.
so
Probably.
if I had so there's 2 things I feel like, maybe 3 that I feel like are missing on here. That if I had to pick, that would be, one of them would be Guardian Angel. Guardian Angel's like it's super good. I will say though, it is like it is like probably strong. I don't know. I was gonna say it's probably strong early game, but it's insane late game too because of the mana. The fact that it keeps mana. So I don't know. Maybe it's just strong in general. I feel like it's an item that should be stronger in the early game because it's reviving someone, you know, at what is a flat health, right? But it's the fact that it keeps mana makes it actually really strong late game, and it actually counters CC in a way, which is pretty cool, by the way, the fact that it counters CC in that way. Also, Morello's and 3-star. We talked about 3-star, but Morello's I feel like 25% is really high. I don't know. I guess think about that, but
actually I have a few thoughts on that. So I agree with both those points. These changes did come out. What was this? These were posted about a week ago at this point.
Yeah. It was a couple days after the patch came out. So
yeah. So one of the most interesting things, or most difficult things, I should say, with developing TFT is at any given point, I'm kind of trying to keep track of like 3 or 4 different iterations of Teamfight Tactics in my mind. I have what's currently live, what we're currently testing for next patch, the half patch, and then future content with like set 2. So if you also take into consideration that everything we ship is delayed from when we make the change because of localization, because it takes time to actually push the change out. Stuff like GA, at least when this list came to be, was like, you know, it was just starting to pick up steam. Yeah, so sure. It is particularly difficult to respond as quickly as we'd like, but you know, do the best we can. I definitely think it is too strong because of the mana.
Isn't then the screenshot like a little bit just posted too early? Like it's posted like 2 days after the patch hit, probably. Like it's probably just like a relief for people. Like we know about Cartus and we know about Shiv, right? Fix it, but I don't know. Maybe
is the patch I don't know if you can answer this. Should we expect the patch tomorrow to be quite a bit different than what this looks like?
I wouldn't say quite a bit different. I think there are some more tweaks to it though. But like around the time where I believe it was Mort who tweeted it out,
Yeah.
That was pretty close to when we had to have the vast majority of it like locked and just not decided. So seems early, but like it's tough.
Yeah.
I wanted to address something that he said earlier, where you've kind of referred to the next like grouping of stuff as set 2. Do you guys intend to separate TFT by seasons, and when the next season comes out, you overhaul and like swap out like 30 units or something, or like how do you guys intend to really like phrase it as set 1 versus set 2, or season 1, season 2, or how do you guys like intend on approaching that?
Sure. So nothing's set in stone yet. We're not sure what will work best or what we want to do. We do want to at least, have the idea on the table that sets are different based on season, where the majority of the skill sets you learn or like the stuff you learn transfers over with possibly just completely new units, new thematics, but like same items, same grid, same movement rules, stuff like that. That's definitely a possibility. I'm not sure what we're going to land on though.
All right. Okay. That's cool to hear, but I never thought that there would be a chance that like you guys would just like change like swap out like 25 units or something. So,
yeah, this goes back into the point of how much change is too much change versus not enough. Good chance that something like that would be too much, but it's also something I'm curious as to the result.
I mean, with a new season, I can see like having a big change, right? Like after a new season, I would really like to see that. Would be awesome. But I'm really curious about your opinion about Sorks at the moment. Like we've gone over it. I think 3 Sorks are, to me, it's too strong of a buff, right? It's too powerful. I don't know. What do you think? What do you think about 3 Sorks?
We've seen it at 35. We've seen it at 45. It depends on the meta, right? Like Demon meta wasn't as good. Maybe it was because Morgana was a thing.
Yeah, Morgana Cannon.
Yeah, right. Like it's so subject to the meta each time. So I want to kind of make a comparison with last patch Cho'Gath versus current Cho'Gath. Current Cho'Gath is without Void. If he has sorcerers, it's very good. 2-star. 2-star Cho'Gath with 3 sorcerers is very powerful. That is pretty similar to how he was last patch. The only difference is he gets to ult because there aren't 4 demons in every battle. So the power of the traits depends on so many different factors that it's tough to kind of understand something that is right now or is wrong now might be right in the future. So Twisted Fate is another example of this, where it's like, hey, we probably think he's not seeing enough play. It's like, oh, by the way, this meta came out, or this comp came out where it's the 6-sword Twisted Fate mana battery, Cho ults a million times, Varus kills everything, whatever. That comp emerged. What is currently, and this again goes back to making sure there's time for the meta to evolve. I personally try and splash 3 sorcerers whenever I can because I understand how much power it's adding to my entire team. For now, that's probably okay. I don't think it's too game warping, but next patch that might be different.
I feel like that. I feel like I'm just lacking. I feel like I'm lacking Naga, and we have Dragon's Claw, right? Dragon's Claw and Dragons. Those 2 things are like the anti-sorcerer or anti-magic damage techs in the game. But those are both focused on a carry rather than a team.
Right.
I feel like that's really what I'm lacking when it comes to Sorks, and I feel like that's why this isn't the first time we've had magic damage be the ultimate end game. In fact, it's almost always been magic damage. There's definitely been a meta, or I guess we have had the Draven metas where that wasn't the case, but it's pretty much always has been that magic damage is like that's what you want late game, like AoE magic damage. I feel like without Naga that's gonna be really hard to change. Instead of having like a consistent DPS team, you'll have just like bursty magic damage that eventually gets over the threshold of killing the whole enemy team, right? So,
I do agree. I think there are not currently good enough answers to strong AoE magic damage. I'm gonna go on a bit of a tangent, if that's all right, talking about dragons. I remember bringing this up early in development. It's like, hey, we think it's a little weird that the counter to magic damage is building one of the best magic damage units in Aurelion Sol. And it's like, yes, that makes sense. The design intent here was more that Aurelion Sol wasn't supposed to be as strong of a unit, and if sorcerers were ever powerful, and there were multiple sorcerer players, having one going into Aurelion Sol meant he would beat the other sorcerer players, but not all the other players. So again, the intent was that would kind of dilute the sorcerer power so that, just the fact of its existence is the counter to it, even if no one goes it. Didn't play out that way. Aurelion Sol had various phases of being either too strong, not meaningfully diluting the pool, leaving not enough of a release valve to keep sorcerers in check, and a million other things. So I think that's the type of thing that we didn't quite hit the mark on that I hope we can do better. But to your point, so tangent over, back towards like late game being focused around AoE damage or AoE like spell damage. Currently, yes, especially with Karthus the way he is in Cho'Gath. Again, that might change. I think at least internal testing from a while ago before I left for vacation, Jinx did some pretty scary stuff. I'm like, oh, why would I go anything other than Jinx? So it is important to understand that like what is currently the best might be meaningfully weaker 9/16 with like Jinx, just that.
Okay.
I want to talk a little bit about the design philosophy of like the way the answers have been showing themselves in TFT. Like, whenever you play dragons as an answer to sorcerers, like I feel like 95% of the time it feels really terrible to have to play Aurelion Sol because it's okay to tech against the sorcerers and you still might lose, but it's just absolutely terrible against everyone else. Mm-hmm. And the same thing with like with Zephyr, where it's like if you go out of your way, right? If you go out of your way to build the Zephyr, and just to like stop a Karthus too, it's like you went really far your way to like half neutralize a threat that might still just kill you half the time, and be much weaker against everyone else. So like what do you think about solutions to things feeling like as bad as they currently do?
So I think for the majority of the game, the best play should be make your comp strong. And like the quick reason there is when you're making your comp strong, you're improving your odds against 7 other people. When you're building the counter, obviously it's 1 or 2. I think as the game goes on, having those options to like counter the person who's in first or second, that adds a lot of like interesting depth. Currently, those counters are a bit too gated behind specific items. So I think things like hextech, where you can actually just tech 2 of those in and maybe counter their carry Draven, that starts to add more options. I think Vi is the bigger one, where if you just tech in like, I don't know, even if it's just a 1-star Vi, that probably won't be enough, but there could be some options to tech towards the end game stuff. Because that, at least personally, I feel smart when I do something like, oh, this person's beating me, I'm going to do this thing and then watch it work. Like that's super satisfying.
Yeah.
So I think that's the thing we want to capture. It's probably not manifesting as well as it could.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, right now, like the best example of that is like late game when you randomly play a Blitzcrank 1 on a turn they're not expecting it, and then they're like, "Oh shit!" and then you're like, "I won the round." You know? But I guess there should definitely be more moments like that.
Right.
Positioning has that feeling a lot, like when you like position your Cassid in a way to hit their Cho'Gath last second, that kind of thing. Or it was that way with demons as well, but you just ended up running like 4 to 6 demons, so it kind of hit everything. But like
you're always positioned.
Yeah, but I think positioning has that feeling a lot, where like that one little change ends up just giving you a huge boost of satisfaction because what you wanted to have happen ended up working. So.
Yeah,
I mean, it was really funny though with like demons or like assassins. When like against assassins, you have to reposition like 7 units, and they just move their Shen over, and you'd be like, "Man, you got me. Well played, sir."
Yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, there is definitely some payoff in positioning, so it does feel good some of the time.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think to that assassin point, like with positioning specifically. It can feel really good to position against them, but if that completely cripples you against other comps, then the game becomes like rock, paper, scissors, right? Who did you match against? So I think there is a risk there if you can position too aggressively against one player to inhibit yourself against someone else. But yeah, it is fun when it works for sure.
What finally led to the decision to make it so it's less likely to play against the same person twice in a row or the ghost multiple times in a row?
So I think that was always going to be an outcome. I'm not sure if that's quite true. So part of the reason, I'm going to take a step back, the reason why it is the way it was, way back when it was in early development and we were matching up people against, we decided to like not mirror the boards, but have have one person travel to another board, and then you actually saw the same fight. Increasing the number of people you got to experience that with was valuable, right? So there is a trade-off to making it so you don't always face the same person twice in a row. You're significantly less likely to face everyone. And I think in previous iterations, I'm not entirely sure if this is correct, but in previous iterations, I'm pretty sure it was set up so that you were more likely to face everyone a few times as opposed to make sure you do not face the same person twice. And this kind of ties into like satisfaction versus frustration, where the satisfaction of fighting your friend if you happen to queue up with them, like, yeah, that's pretty cool. However, the frustration of fighting the same person that you just lost to and they're the only person you lose to twice in a row, like by far trumps that in my mind. So I think the intentions were good. It's like, hey, we want to make it so that, you can fight more people, you see other people's armies more frequently. The cost of sometimes fighting the same army twice in a row is much higher than we gave credit.
Wait, it is currently completely random, right? It's
I don't believe so.
Oh, really?
It might. It's gone through so many iterations, I'm not sure where we landed. Okay. But yes, there is a non-trivial cost to never fighting the same person twice in a row. One of those trade-offs is when you get to Final 3, you know who you're fighting against. But that's a different issue. And as far as the ghost armies go, that's always been a bug.
Yeah.
That's
there's really nothing else.
The amount of people that I've had to tell, like, no, it's a bug, no, it's a bug, no, it's a bug, and they won't believe me. They're like, no, it's intended. It's like, what?
The same people who, made the game load well and made the game so that movement is much better now than it was previously are the people who would address this issue. It has to do with how all the information from the armies is stored, and since we're not duplicating armies in the same way, we're not duplicating traits. So when armies go from one board to another and you fight there, cool. All the traits can be within your army and then they go everywhere and they function normally. Ghost army is the only thing that actually has to get duplicated, and we did not have it set up initially to duplicate traits as well. That information was stored separately, but that's getting more into the specifics, but TLDR, it's a bug.
Is the fact that you don't take 2 courier damage a bug?
Ooh, good question. Let's say yes.
Okay.
I can also, there's no such thing as bugs. They're only unintuitive features, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I would not be surprised if that also gets changed. And with some of the future changes we're thinking about, it makes even more sense to call that a bug. So let's call it a bug.
Okay.
is that being like? I mean, probably is that being worked on like the ghost, or is it like just very hard to fix, or is it like pushed back a little? We do something else first.
It's not so much difficulty as it is time consuming and risky. And the thing you always have to realize is like, while it seems like, oh, this is clearly a big problem, what else could they possibly be working on that's more important? The answer is there's a lot of stuff that's future coming out. If we always balance with that in mind, TFT never would have happened, right? It's like, no, these engineers who are going to move on to TFT, they actually saw problems in League they have to fix. So they're not allowed to. I understand the frustration. Like, I tend to err on the side of like perfectionist, sort of, in terms of like bug fixing. Like, I'd rather fix every bug than move forward with something, but like that's just not realistic in terms of player value. So unfortunate trade-off. I've come to terms with it, and but it is definitely something we're going to try and fix because it is higher priority.
I'm glad we know 100%. I'm just glad.
Haven't I literally Afic? I thought I've told you literally Afic has told me it's a bug.
Yeah, it is a bug.
Well, now everyone knows. Now everyone.
Okay,
The
yeah.
information is even more out there.
Exactly.
I should clip this and then whenever someone says it's intended, no. It's
I'm
not
gonna get a few
intended.
angry work messages like, that's not a bug. It's like, uh-oh.
Like it's not
But
not that people say it's intended. Like people say it's intended, and they also say why it's intended. It's like where are you get?
Yeah.
Like, it should be weaker.
Yeah.
Of course, it should be weaker. I'm like, why?
What do you mean I
What?
can't state
Dealing-
my opinion as a fact?
Dealing damage isn't nearly as important as taking damage, right? So
Yeah.
anyway, well, we also need to talk about what we have been playing on, not just what is coming out, but the meta that has been around. It's pretty much this, what's on screen. So actually, I like it. There's a static shift involved as well. It's like it's a little bit of everything.
That's a perfect picture.
Yeah.
Crisis is missing a star, but
These
Yeah,
items
that's-
are absurd.
Someone caught it. This is from my stream.
That's cool, dude.
it's streamer luck.
I think it was like
Yeah.
stage 6 to be fair, but yeah.
Oh,
Anyway, yeah, that is really good. Yeah, so yeah, I'd like to hear a bit about what you guys have been playing. I'm gonna stay with our special guest. I want to hear about what you've been playing. So you had your week off. You've been playing a lot. I know you said you've been putting Sorks and everything. Is there anything? What's been going along with your Sorks? What you've been?
Frequently brawlers.
Brawler Sorks, okay.
I'm a bit of a meta slave, so I force Karthuses. I always pick up Cho'Gaths. Kennen hasn't fallen off for me. I probably go pirates and gunslingers more often than I should, and convince myself that I can make it work.
nope.
So maybe that's why I'm ready for Jinx to come out. But yeah, I think I'm pretty on board with like the brawlers. I think the one that I also force too much is probably 4 Rangers. I've recently stopped going 4 Rangers and then just sticking at 2 and then like adding a much more flexibility.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's pretty much everything.
Have you guys been liking Rangers? I feel like they get slaughtered late game always. Like, I've kind of like trying to avoid them. Like, I'll earn the mid game for a little bit, and then I'm like, okay, get out of my team.
I think 2 Ranger comps are like in a very good spot.
Yeah.
4 Ranger comp might be like viable at like level 8 or 9 or with a, but I think at level 7 pushing 4 Rangers can be very rough for your team. You don't think you have enough frontline most of the time. So, but 2 Rangers you can add like a lot of different stuff.
You're
so.
wanting Ash Kindred, right? Not Varus.
I mean, it's to me, it just depends on the game, right? Just like what do you have 2-star, right? Like what it's just like, but yeah, you prefer Ash Kindred with the Karthus, you know?
I mean, it kind of depends like what's viable in the meta, right? So like a time where like you could like kind of just go Braum Leona and be like, oh, this is a good front line. It makes my Rangers tankier. I can go like Guardians with 4 Rangers and play like another Phantom. And like you can't do that as much if everyone's running 3 Sorks and just dealing a bunch of magic damage to you, right? So like that's probably why you don't like 4 Rangers as much as you did before.
Yeah. I think Guardians were like pretty good, but like I feel like 50% of the people in my lobbies go Sorks. Yep. So for me, they fall off like real hard. I sometimes take a Braum just because of the glacial. Maybe run some 4 glacial stuff with elementalists.
But Rens, not even that, right? Like you also think how popular Void is right now. So it's like 2 different things. And you're like, great. Yeah. Like,
I think I see in Void less than Sorks though, because Void relies on a 4-cost unit.
Yeah.
And Sorks doesn't need like it wants Karthus, right? Or like, but it doesn't need that, right? So it's a little less inconsistent.
Sorks is a higher damage increase than I guess Sorks is a much higher ability damage increase, but there's the auto attack that auto attacks matter. But in terms of like increases Cho'Gath's ability, Sorks is way higher, except against certain comps like nobles.
Late game is all about Cho ult anyway. Like,
yeah.
Rexa auto attacks is not gonna do that much late game.
Have you guys played much nobles?
No. I mostly, when I see kill, I think about 6 knights, and I don't think about nobles most of the time. I mean, I think they're in a really good spot though. It's just like I usually just sell my Fiora and Lucian.
Yeah, I never want to. I never
game.
want to commit to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just don't have it. Like I just don't have the units anymore, and I don't have the money to roll for like a vein or something, you know. So, but I think that's in a very good spot for sure.
I feel like every time I try to go 6 nobles recently, I've just like trapped myself between like 2 comps and never actually being do I want to play the 6 nobles or like take out all these synergies and then like play like I'll stare at like literally 7 Garen sitting on my bench and being like what do I do with these? Or,
I don't think you
like,
should prioritize 3-star Garen. Then.
I mean, how much money does it really cost me, right? Like, but then it's just kind of like they're sitting there. I'm like,
Hey, you got a Morello and a GA on him.
Them.
And then wish you had a choke.
Actually, a question: like, how many times do you guys still go 3 stars? Like, I've been
Only
going
gunslingers.
no 3 stars whatsoever.
Actually, I've
Never.
3-starred Kha'Zix a few times. Sometimes I'll have like enough Kha'Zixes and Kassadins to just go for a 3-star of those.
But like way less than let's say a week ago or 2 weeks ago. I feel like to me, I don't pick them up anymore. I sell them on my best for interest.
But because now you're doing the thing where you're trying to hit late game and hit 2-star legendaries, which is
exactly.
Like you can't do both, right? You can't hit 3-star units and 2-star legendaries. You get to do one or the other. I did find myself like randomly like build a lot of 3-star Vigars for some reason. I don't know why that's been happening, but like I'm always kind of like, wow, like if this game goes long, like this is just really good. But 3-star Vigars still just one shots all the legendaries. So
yeah, if I'm like insanely high rolling, I go for 3 stars. But like I'm never lucky, so that never happens. That's
This is actually from Ren's stream, this picture.
Hey, can we get this picture off the screen? I'm tired of looking at it. I've never seen one of my games like this ever, so.
Yeah, that card that's got pinged a lot when I was playing it. People kept pinging
So
it.
yeah, Nature, what have you been playing? Like this as well, or?
Yeah, I mean, I try to transition every game into having 3 Sorks. Like, as soon as I hit a card, then I'm like, okay, how do I fit in 3 Sorks? But I've been playing a lot of Imperials as well. Like, a lot of Imperials. I play a lot of Draven.
4 Imperials or 2?
If I get 4, yeah, I'll literally run 4 Imperials, 3 Sorks. Like,
okay. Oh, okay.
Like 4 Imperials, 3 Sorks, and a Cho'Gath at level 8. It's pretty good. Like, so
I can see it.
Yeah, so I've been doing a lot of that, and I play a lot more aggressive still than some people. I'm trying to tone it down a bit, but I still play stage 3 decently aggressively. I'll tab around people, like there'll be like 4 people at 50 gold in stage 3. Like
at the end.
Yeah. I still play it decently aggressively. What I've been trying to do is like people play it passively. I'm trying to like win streak all of stage 3 a lot of the time because you just kind of can if you invest money. I'm trying to figure that out. And then people started actually like people that are win streaking, they started leveling on 3-4. Leveling on 3-4 to 7 has become not like super common, but decently common. Like I'll see like one person do it every other game. So that's been interesting to me in terms of just like overall economy management. How have you how greedy have you guys been being? I'm curious. Pheylop sitting up.
In my challenge games that I've been playing, like since I'm back, like it's actually been weird. I feel like I'm like, oh, I'm being so greedy right now. But then I look around, like everyone has like 30 or 40 gold. I'm like, nah, I'm not even being that greedy. I don't know. Definitely greedier than I was before I went to Gen Con.
I feel like at least the top 6 to top 5 people are like super greeding. The guy at the bottom is probably not greeding in the mid game. He kind of has to hit like his 2-star 3 cost to be able to survive. But I feel like more than half people are greeding, and like at least try to go to level 8 or like legendaries. Try to win the game because of that. Not everyone. I think I spend a lot of my gold at 7 still. Like just level up and spend all my gold, and then try to hit stuff, and then try to stabilize from there, and then slowly turn back on my eco and then try to go to 8. But yeah, I think a lot of people have been greeding in the mid game like super hard, and I think that's kind of just because of the legendaries being like a little bit too strong right now.
I think the damage decrease actually had a pretty large impact. Not just Karthus getting buffed, but I think just like the damage increase actually I think it was way more impactful than I expected it to be. I didn't expect much from it because it was late game, but it seemed to have a decent amount of impact. And people have been saying, I've been parroting this a lot, and I agree with them that the mid game, even the early game, which is pretty aggressive still. Early game I feel like is pretty aggressive, and then you slow down. I feel like it all feels actually decently good right now. It's just the late game that I'm having an issue with.
Yeah. I'm actually kind of have a question for Afic. Like, I thought the GA, let's say bug, is that a bug? Let's say on Swain, where he like still goes on like with transformation during the GA, because that makes Swain such a strong unit. Otherwise, Swain would not be that good without GA.
So the way it is worded leads me to believe that that is how it should work. It's pretty much if the ability has cast and it has like a persistent effect, it should keep going, which is different than Karthus, which is a channel. So channel can get interrupted. Kennen it works. I would expect it to work on Morgana.
It doesn't work.
Yeah, that's the thing. It doesn't work. It does not work on Kennen.
That's a problem.
Right. So since it is inconsistent, it probably should be changed one way or another. My assumption is we haven't like decided what we want it to be. Right. There's no such thing as a bug. It's unintuitive features. So what is your expectation? Like power aside, what's your expectation of how it should work?
Is it if it's supposed to feel like Zhonya's, then the ability should keep going. If it's not supposed to feel like Zhonya's, then the ability shouldn't. But that being said, like my expectation is that in the future, like some season, like the items change and Locket doesn't exist and Zhonya's does, and then it'll be intuitive for that. That's not how it works in regular League, and so for me, I'm like, why would the ability keep going? So
that's probably how it should be. So I'll talk to them tomorrow and see if we get that changed.
Well, I'm curious on Rens. Rens didn't play League, so what was your expectation?
It's exactly where. Oh, sorry, you're talking about my
Rens,
bad.
yeah.
Go ahead.
What do you mean about GA?
Yeah, how do you expect it to work? Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it like I mean, I only play TFT, and I think when your ability still goes on, even though you're like resurrecting, kind of feels broken. Makes some units way too strong, like Kennen, like Swain. So, in terms of balance, I would like to see that not happen, because GA is already too strong, and this makes it even more stronger. So, I would be like fine if it just doesn't, just stops his transformation or his spell.
Cool. What were you saying, Afic? What were?
That's. The way it works in League is GA would cancel, Zhonya's would not. So Zhonya's doesn't currently exist in TFT, so I would expect it to not keep casting, personally.
Okay, that's good.
Cool.
But then it's good to know that it's not a bug. I mean, it's so inconsistent that it kind of looks like a bug, but maybe
it definitely does. So it doesn't match my expectations. The reason I word is like, what are your expectations power aside is what would you rather happen, and then we'll balance around that. And the way that makes more intuitive sense to me is it cancels the ability. But I also expect people who have transformed to stay transformed, but that's a different conversation. Right, like a Shyvana that comes out of GA is back in her base form.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
I agree. Nar.
Yeah.
I assume this is under everything's on the table kind of thing. Are new basic items a possibility ever? It seems like such a massive change. They are? Okay.
On the table.
It's like cool. There's so much that happens when you just add a new basic item. It's like so many new items.
That's a lot of work.
That'll also do good things in terms of like, I personally like the game more when you take your components and figure out what you want to build, as opposed to I'm going for this thing every game and I can always get it. So adding another item to the pool dilutes the consistency, which makes being able to adapt a more desirable skill. So.
Yeah, just give me the zero consistency game, please. all ad living all the time.
Right.
Well, I'm so excited for him to be like, oh well, like with the skins and stuff. I'm like, ooh, we went from like 130 champions to like thousands.
Like
thousands and thousands.
At one, we have 1,000 champions at one time. You'll never two-star anything.
Well, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying like there's like a lot of like room for like kind of like evolution, constant changing, and even shifting back and forth. Yeah, like you have a lot of different like formats where you can kind of like, you know, just like having like different like combinations of units in the game at a time are creating vastly different metas, right? Like that's just like that's a cool idea. I'm pretty excited about it because like it'd be really interesting to see like if there's like an invitational tournament or something, and like each like player that's invited gets to like choose like a group of units to put in, and then like they create the meta that way, and that's like an insanely cool idea, right? Like I don't know. There's like a lot of room for interesting ideas to play with when you expand the playground that much.
Mm-hmm.
This is purely because I want to ask, and I feel like I know the answer to this. That I feel like I've read on Twitter that it is like on the way. It's not really in your purview, but spectate mode for tournaments.
On the backlog, definitely something we want to do. Back
okay.
to the value of those engineers. It's like, hey, you want them to fix ghost armies, or you want them to make spectator? That's a decision we have to make. They're a limited resource.
Let's go ghost first. Let's go.
Yeah.
I'm actually kind of curious about the carousel change. Maybe you can talk about it from last week. Why did you guys remove one?
That was actually, I think that was one of my favorite like subtle changes, where you want lose streaking to be more viable. Let's assume we want lose streaking to be more viable. This is a pretty interesting way that makes lose streaking more viable, but you don't understand why, right? If the first place person now has like 33% fewer options to choose from, they're a lot less likely to complete their, let's call it a GA, and continue their snowball. So limiting like in making the first place person like weaker, you make it more viable to lose streak, or there's an extra benefit to it because now you can more reliably get an item that someone who is in second or third is significantly less likely to get.
But the guy who picks first is also 1 unit less.
But it's a percentage,
one unit less, so maybe he needs a rot, and like the chance of a rot is being lower with less units on the carousel, right?
Sure. So on average, he gains proportional to the first place person.
Yeah.
So okay, sure.
10% versus whatever percent, right?
Yeah.
That makes sense.
I mean, when I'm losing, I'm often looking for like one. Like from the carousel, you're often looking for like one item, right? Because you only get one, of course, and and not being like just having a lower chance of seeing that item there. I mean, it's probably better. Like I don't know, but it feels like kind of a nerf to actually the first guy as well.
My carousels have felt awful, and I don't know if that's because of the change, but like I feel like over and over I'm like, well, it's not here, it's not here, it's not here. Both items I want are here, that kind of thing. I don't know if that's because of the change.
It's probably I don't know, maybe, but it's also because like Morello's GA are like so dominant right now, right? So it's actually they're kind of a little bit too good. We already talked about this, but like when I start the game, when basically everyone starts the game in Challenger, I'm gonna need 2 GAs. I'm gonna need 1 Morello's. That's just how it is. Like if I want to win the game, I basically need those items.
There's not a pool of items, right?
I don't believe so.
Okay, I didn't think so.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean everyone is looking for like mostly like swords and armor in like carousel. A lot of the time, because not the first carousel, but like the second one.
First carousel too.
First carousel, but I think you can go other things.
Yeah, you can.
On first carousel, you don't necessarily need that. But on the second and third, you definitely want to look for the GA component mostly.
Yeah.
Or Morello.
Yep. Which is, to be fair, those are 4 different items, right? Yeah, which is nice. But GA is priority, so usually.
Exactly.
Anyway, I think that about wraps up. Any other things that you guys want to talk about before we go off? Any other questions for Afic?
Well, I don't know. Like I was wondering, maybe I don't know if you can talk about like tournaments from Riot, or how do you guys see the tournaments at a tournament scene in TFT, or like can you talk about that a little bit or not?
Definitely on the table. I think the genre doesn't have a good solution to what a format should look like, right? In the game that is as RNG dependent as this game, not 100% obviously, but a non-trivial amount. It is important to get the format right. So I don't foresee anything in the near future, but I don't know, 6 months from now, quite possibly.
All right.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, I feel like the only tournament systems I've seen that work at all are point based, right?
Yep.
Um,
And those tend to be a bit those run the risk of being a bit anticlimactic towards the
right.
end.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. That's why. Yeah. I think Twitch Rivals did it where it gets point based, but then all that matters is the last game, right?
Yeah.
And that still feels bad for the players
Right.
because like, oh well, I was the number 1 point leader by like a mile, and now I'm 8th. Yay.
Yep.
But as long as you're properly incentivized and like you still like feel like you did well on the day if you place 8th, I think that's okay. It definitely varies, but like you have to remember, like, you know, half of esports is for the viewers, right? Like more than half is for the viewers.
Yes.
So like that you want them to be properly invested into the final game, and the only way to do that is to pretty much make it so that like your placement's your placement in the final game. I think like the more I think about it as a viewer.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm
So,
actually
like,
kind of. Sorry. Go ahead. There you go.
I was just saying, basically, like at the end of it, it's just like as long as it still feels okay to be 8th, even if you were an overwhelming point leader going into it, that's fine. Because like if you look at any other game, like if you look at Magic the Gathering, it doesn't matter if you were undefeated in the Swiss rounds and like the next person was like X2, and like you all top 8 the same way, and if you lose in the quarterfinals, you get fucking 8th. Like that's it. You know, it's okay.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just have another question for Afic. Like, was that like maybe a thing in TFT, like early development, where you maybe tested some stuff and it was like really bad or something? You had to get rid of it. It was like really funny or something. I don't know. Like maybe something like that where you guys were, well, maybe this is good or fun, and then you tested it and then it was like awful and you just get rid of it immediately. Or did you never had that kind of?
I mean, the quick answer is a million times yes.
Okay.
Nothing specifically jumps out. I have a few go-to league ones that I reference, but those aren't quite as applicable. One thing that I'm glad we didn't go with was the last. So there are currently 9 bench slots. Bench slots 7, 8, and 9 were locked behind a purchase, so you could purchase for like 2, 4, 6.
That's what I read actually.
Yeah, so it was like that for a while.
Buy with RP.
Hey RP, you start with 150 health. No, that was probably there are so many things that we ended up trying.
Okay.
Oh, there's one thing that was really cool. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Lee Sin in League of Legends, but pretty much shoots out an ability, he hits someone, and he can like travel to that target and do bonus damage, and then his ultimate would kick someone away. So what he would do is he'd be right next to you, hit you with the first ability, kick them away, so they'd go across the map, and then he would travel to them all in one move. And like that was sweet. That was his iconic insect move, as it's called. And he did that in TFT, but it had a lot of other issues, and we ended up not shipping it.
Oh man, I was excited. I thought like it was like kick them, go behind, kick like the unit, the whole enemy team, and then go back in.
Right.
Yeah. That being said, at this point, I'm totally like, oh please let me pay some gold for an extra slot or like an extra 2 slots. I'm actually kind of like, oh, I kind of like that idea, but it's like, how much is that worth? I have no idea.
I mean, I don't want to ask another question, kind of, but maybe a small thing about overflow in TFT.
I knew
say
this
something
was
about
that.
just a small thing. I don't want to drag it too long. Like, what is your opinion? You know,
it is similar to my previous opinions. As a semi-high rated player, I personally liked what overflow did for the game. I do understand that it is something that is very unintuitive, not like achievable for the vast majority of players, and something that potentially has better solves. So I think wanting overflow for the sake of overflow is not great. Wanting overflow because you want to be able to transition into other comps, or you want to be able to more easily pivot or more reliably get 3-star units. Those are all great things. Those specific things probably have other solutions you can do to them. That's my personal take on it. But like, sure. I liked it in auto chess. I understand exactly why we didn't do it. And if there are big problems, I'm hoping we can find clever solutions to those other problems.
I had to ask it.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
You kind of gave me the right idea.
So because I don't want to be the one to say the reason. It'd probably better coming from you, just for viewers, because we know the reason. But if you want to say for viewers what the reason is that overflow doesn't exist. Oh, by the way, overflowing, by the way, is where you can go. I probably should say this as well. Overflowing is where you can go during the round. You can go 9 out of 8. Like say you have 8 slots on the board, you can put a unit from your bench onto the bench, and then buy another unit and keep growing. And eventually you can go 15 out of 8. But at the end of the round, anything that you have overflown, if you don't have bench spots for it, it gets sold off. Everything will get randomly sent back to your bench, and then if there's no slots on your bench, it gets sold off. So you can do is you can buy a unit, put it on the board, roll, buy another unit, put it on the board, roll, and then eventually you go through your gold and find units that way. Now I'll hand it to Afic to explain why they didn't do that real quick, and then we'll close the show.
Yeah, so there are kind of a bunch of reasons. Part of it is the unintuitiveness. The biggest one for me, or the one that is most resonant with me, is in a game that is highly strategic, lots of decision making, you get rewarded and punished for your decisions. Adding in this subtle high APM requirement kind of goes counterintuitive to the nature of the game. It should be more about decision making and what you do with those decisions, instead of how fast you can click a mouse. That's the most resonant reason as to why this shouldn't be a thing, right? I will say on my break, I was able to play comfortably on my laptop with a touchpad. So if overflow were a thing, I don't think I would have been able to do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Before we close that, what if
leave the man
between
alone.
rounds you had a cushion of 5 spaces under your bench?
I brought that up.
Where you had a temporary bench, and then it disappears at the end of the round. And if there are units there, they get sold.
I'm going to give you the same answer, I'm going to answer your question with a question, and start by asking, what is the problem you're trying to solve?
I want more options than I currently have.
All right, so I think that is a good problem to solve. I'm not sure that is the best solution for it. That might do it. I don't know, right? There are a million what ifs. What if we did a million other things? We could go into all of them, but I don't have a good answer as why we didn't. That would require more tech stuff, and it's still the same. It's adding an APM requirement.
Yeah. Well, it's all about the sweet spot, right? You want to avoid the APM, but you don't want people to feel like they didn't have a chance to make a decision yet. So, I think what you have to really do in the end is test, how many unit slots you need between rounds to pivot effectively.
Mm-hmm.
And, at the same time, what's too many spaces that makes people feel overwhelmed when they stare at the screen between rounds.
Right.
So, I think it's all kind of surveys and kind of playing it and feeling it out. But I do think that the current method is too restrictive.
Yeah.
That's all.
No, I agree. It's definitely something again, if everything's on the table, guess what? That's on the table too. If there's enough desire for it, I believe we would try and make it happen. I'm not convinced that's going to happen in the near future, but in the future, who knows?
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Afic, for being on the show.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, that's gonna be it from us here at Open Fort. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you want, I can't do the command. My bot's down. So if you Google Open Fort YouTube, I'm sure it's there. If you guys here on Twitch want to go find that out. If you're on YouTube, you're already watching here anyway. Yeah, thank you so much. Pheylop, Rens, anything to part with?
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to say this was an awesome episode. I really liked all the episodes were awesome, but I felt like I really got a good insight of TFT, and I had an awesome time listening to Afic. So thank you for coming on, man. It was
fun. Thanks for having me. Enjoyed it.
I appreciate you putting yourself on the shooting range also.
My strategy is if you ever say anything too harsh, I just ask a different question at you and just do one of these. So.
Okay.
We questioned you more than we've questioned anyone else. So appreciate it. So yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I'll see you guys next week, same time, 6 p.m. PST. No, I can't say who guesses yet, 'cause I'm not certain yet, but we'll let you know. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye.
Yes, goodbye.
Peace.